My office always felt like a bunker from the rest of the house. Little room at the back, desk scarred from years of blueprints and invoices, fan rattling in the window trying to push August heat back out into the street. I was staring at emails when I heard the softest knock. Not even a full knock, more like fingertips testing the wood. Zaria stood in the doorway, half in, half out, like she wasn't sure she was welcome. 15 years old, and she looked 15 except around the eyes, rimmed red, lids swollen like she'd cried herself empty and was still leaking sorrow. She held something pinched between her fingers, a black flash drive. On its side, in neat silver Sharpie, was a name that cut through me like a blade. Mirelle, my wife. "Dad," she whispered, voice shaking like a loose screen door in the wind. "Just watch it." I leaned back, tried for a joke, something light. "What is it? Old vacation videos? Me in that dumb hat?" Her hands trembled. She didn't smile, didn't explain, just set the drive down on the corner of my desk, my corner, worn smooth where my wrist had lived for years. The letters gleamed in lamplight. She didn't wait for me to ask her anything else. She just turned, walked away, shoulders stiff like she was carrying bricks nobody else could see. I sat there staring at that little plastic thing like it was ticking. My finger hovered over it, but I didn't touch. My mind scrambled for ordinary explanations, maybe a slideshow, maybe some project for school, but my gut had already left the station. I finally slid it into the port. The laptop chimed cheerful, like this wasn't a funeral. One file appeared, 19 minutes long. Thumbnail, a hotel room, beige walls, queen bed, sheets tucked like a catalogue photo. My cursor hovered over the play button, and suddenly that triangle looked more like a trigger. I froze there, listening to the fan buzz, watching the digital FCKng seconds wait. The weight in my stomach told me, once you press, you don't come back. I clicked. The video was clean, steady, like whoever set it up cared about framing. My breath hitched when the figure stepped into the shot. I knew her instantly, Mirelle, my wife, hair falling the way it always did, that tilt of her smile I'd memorized like scripture. Except tonight she wore a black dress I'd never seen before, the kind you don't pull off a clearance rack. She was laughing in a tone I hadn't heard in years. Bright, light, unburdened. Then another figure entered. A man, tall, mid-30s, gym muscles straining his shirt, wineglass in hand. He handed it to her, their glasses clinked. She lifted hers, crystal clear, into the mic of that phone camera. To finally getting away. I felt my jaw tighten, but I didn't blink. The man asked, "Your husband really believes you're at a conference?" Her laugh hit me harder than any punch I'd ever taken. "Q believes whatever I tell him. He's too busy with job sites to notice anything." Steel cables wrapped around my ribs, pulling tighter with each syllable. I should have stopped. I didn't. I just sat there in my darkening office, the cursor blinking on the black edge of the screen. The sound of her laugh circling the room like a haunting. And I didn't yell, didn't smash the laptop, didn't even curse. I just went quiet, quieter than I'd ever been. That silence weighed more than rage ever could. The house had gone quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the slow bubble of beans on the stove. Midnight light leaked through the blinds in pale stripes, laying across the counter like ghost fingers. I was standing over the pot, wooden spoon in hand, though I hadn't taken a bite in hours. The fan of the laptop still whispered back in the office, but I couldn't look at that screen again. Not yet. Zaria padded into the kitchen, barefoot, sweatshirt sleeves pulled down over her hands. She sat at the table without asking, without waiting. Her eyes darted to the pot, then to me. "I need to tell you everything," she said. Voice low, firm. I set the spoon down, wiped my palms on my jeans, sat across from her. My girl looked older than 15 in that moment. Tired older. The kind of older you shouldn't have to be yet. She pulled out her phone, unlocked it, slid it across the table like it was evidence in a trial. "I've known for 3 months. Z." I heard her one night. You were working late. She was on the phone, laughing, talking in a way I never heard her talk to you. It made me sick. She tapped the phone screen. A gallery opened, photos, timestamps, angles that no teenager should have had to take. First shot, Mirelle at a fancy Italian spot downtown, candles on the table, wine glasses glowing like jewels. She was laughing, leaning forward, dress hugging her body. A dress I'd never seen, a dress I never paid for. Her hand stretched across the table holding his. Cade's hand. Each swipe showed another nail in the coffin. Receipts, hotel confirmations, even a photo of them slipping into the Marriott, her hair catching light from the lobby chandelier. I couldn't look too long. I pressed my palms flat to the table, steadying myself. "You've been following her?" "Somebody had to," she said sharp. "She's been lying to you, Dad, to both of us, and I couldn't just sit here and let her do it." My heart broke twice, once for what she'd seen and again for how she'd had to see it. "You shouldn't have—" "Don't," she cut me off. "Don't say I shouldn't. I had to. I'm not sorry." Her voice carried steel, but her hands trembled when she tucked her phone back into her sleeve. "Z," I leaned forward, "I don't want you carrying this weight." She shook her head. "It's already mine, and I'm telling you now, you can't just blow up, yell, or throw things. That's what she'll expect. She'll twist it. Make you the problem. You gotta be smart, Dad. Be cold. Be the kind of man who don't just survive it. He flips it." Her words landed harder than any sermon, any advice I'd ever been given. My daughter, looking at me not as a kid but as a partner in this fight. I nodded slow, felt the silence wrap tight around us. The smell of beans filled the room, heavy and earthy, anchoring me in something real while the world tilted sideways. "You're right," I finally said. "We don't storm, we don't scream, we do this clean, no theatrics, no sudden moves." I reached across the table, covered her shaking hand with mine. "We're not going to be fire, Z. Fire burns quick and leaves ash. We'll be water, cold, steady, a river that carves stone. That's how we win." Her lip quivered, but she nodded. A flicker of relief passed across her face, relief that I heard her, that I wasn't about to collapse under the weight of betrayal. We sat there in that kitchen, beans simmering soft behind us, blinds cutting the night into stripes, making a vow without saying the word. She'd gathered the evidence, I'd carry the plan. Together, we'd become something colder than rage, something sharper. That night, I chose silence again. But this time it wasn't weakness. It was the first step in a strategy. I wasn't going to be the storm tearing through walls. I was going to be the river. Patient, relentless, impossible to stop. Saturday morning sun spilling through the blinds like honey. I stepped into King's chair, the barber shop that had been the heartbeat of our block longer than I'd been alive. Clippers buzzed in sync like cicadas in July. Somebody's nephew was sweeping hair into little piles while two old heads argued about the Lakers on the back bench. In the far corner, a game of spades slapped cards sharp against wood, every shout timed like percussion. Mr. Cyrus stood at his throne chair, silver hair at his temples, hands steady as always. He gave me a nod when he saw me step in, the kind that said, "I see you, son. No, you carrying something." I didn't drop names, didn't spill details, just eased into the cracked leather seat, let the cape drape across my chest and spoke in half sentences that still carried weight. Sometimes the person you trust most forgets who you are, starts writing their own story, and leaves you out the pages. Clippers hummed. Cyrus's eyes in the mirror never flinched. "Anger don't build nothing," I added. "Noise don't hold in court. What holds is proof. Paper, timestamps, facts." From the spades table somebody grunted, "Facts never lie." I nodded. "We ain't in the business of breaking things. We document, quiet, clean. Then when it's time, we let the truth speak louder than we ever could." Cyrus finally cut in, voice gravel but certain. "Dignity is discipline. Remember that. You lose your cool, you already lost the game." It hit me straight in the chest. Dignity is discipline. That line should have been painted on the walls. A man in the next chair leaned over, still half under the clippers. Young cat, sharp suit even on a Saturday. He whispered like we'd been speaking the same language all along. "You need someone fierce on your side. Call Noelle Batch. She's mean with the paperwork. HBCU grad, doesn't lose cases. I'll text you her number." I didn't even ask why he offered. Barbershops don't trade gossip, they trade survival tools. And then, like the universe was stacking the deck, Aunt Lottie breezed in, jangling those keys she always wore around her wrist. Woman had keys to everything in the county. Church basements, rec centres, her cousin's storage units. She kissed Mr. Cyrus on the cheek, winked at me, and when Cyrus turned back to his clippers, she leaned down close. "I heard things," she murmured. "I'll make a few calls, addresses, schedules, all neat and proper. No mess. You'll get what you need." She tapped her keys like punctuation and floated back out the door, leaving a little gospel breeze behind her. I sat there, staring into the mirror, clippers tracing the back of my neck. For the first time since Zaria handed me that flash drive, I didn't feel alone. Threads were weaving, connections sparking, a net forming around me that I hadn't even asked for. Community. Quiet. Unshakable. By the time Cyrus dusted my neck and shook my hand, the decision was made. This wasn't going to be a one-man storm. The block itself had put armor on me. The network was alive, whispering, ready. I walked out of King's chair into the bright morning knowing something had shifted. I wasn't just a man with a wound anymore. I was a man with a plan, backed by people who understood that truth ain't heavy when a whole community helps you carry it. I had officially stopped being alone. Noelle Branch's office sat high over downtown, walls lined with framed degrees and black and white photos of her sorority sisters at Howard, arms linked, heads held proud. The air smelled like fresh coffee and printer ink, sharp and alive. Sat across from her desk, leather creaking under me, trying not to look like a man whose life had just cracked in half. She didn't waste time. "Mr. Holt," she began, voice smooth but edged like a razor. "In this state, adultery still counts as fault. That means we don't have to wait a year. We don't have to play nice. You bring me proof and we walk the fast lane." I nodded, kept my hands folded tight on my knee. Proof. I already had 19 minutes on a flash drive and a daughter who had played detective, but Noelle was clear. "Don't bring me emotions. Don't bring me what you feel, or the court doesn't weigh tears. It weighs documents, timestamps, receipts, a doc packet for a judge, not a diary for your pain." That line landed hard. I felt it in my chest. She slid a legal pad across the desk, 3 bullet points already written in her neat no-nonsense hand. "Separate accounts. Open one tomorrow," she said. "Divert part of your check, but not enough to trigger alarms. Keep the lights on, but start stacking your own reserve. Direct deposit shuffle. Reroute to payroll. Quiet. Clean. You want resources when the storm hits. Credit card audit. Every swipe leaves a fingerprint. We'll cross-reference her trips, her purchases, with your supposed late nights. It'll play well." She sipped her coffee like it was all routine, like she wasn't dismantling my entire marriage with a pen stroke. "You got someone watching her?" she asked, eyes sharp. I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, a buddy, Satch. He's been following the trail. He can get more." Her mouth curved just enough to count as approval. "Good. I'll need a timeline, days, dates, patterns. The cleaner, the better. If he's professional, tell him to think courtroom. Photos with timestamps, logs that read like clockwork." The hum in my chest steadied. This wasn't chaos anymore. This was blueprint work. Something I knew, something I could hold. "I know what you're thinking," she said, leaning forward. "You want to yell, you want to drag her through the mud, you want to make her feel what you're feeling. Don't. That's a gift to her lawyer. We're not messy, we're precise. Let her drown in her own evidence." Her words reminded me of Cyrus in the barbershop. Discipline, proof, strategy. I left her office with a folder under my arm, full of forms and instructions, and a strange clarity in my step. I wasn't going to brawl in the dark. I was going to build a case, brick by brick, until it stood taller than her lies. That evening, Satch called while I was driving home. His voice came through grainy but steady. "I'm on her and Cade now. Same hotel, same pattern. I'll get you a full log. Times, receipts, photos, week by week. By the time I'm done, you'll have a timeline the judge can hang a gavel on." I gripped the wheel tighter, headlights cutting through the night. The plan was forming piece by piece. Gather facts, build the packet. Deliver it not in my living room, not at the dinner tables, not through shouts until you slam doors, but in the one arena where her charm, her laugh, her carefully curated image couldn't save her. Her office, her peers, her court. That was the rhythm now. Cold, steady, legal, Minslistlik the city that night. Neon signs bleeding down wet pavement like watercolour gone wild. The Marriott lot glowed under sodium lamps, every puddle reflecting the corporate logo back at itself. My phone buzzed twice in my pocket while I sat in the truck across town. Satch. First ping was a photo, Morel's Lexus, plate sharp in the glare, parked 2 rows from the side entrance. Next shot, Cade's black Dodge Charger, raindrops still fresh on the hood. Timestamp 7:06 p.m. Tuesday. Then came the message, "Same pattern, boss, Tuesdays and Thursdays, dinner first, hotel second," like clockwork. I pulled the image wider. Their plates sat neat in his log, no mistakes, Satch's notes attached receipts too, copies of restaurant tabs from Giovanni's, the expensive Italian downtown. 2 entrees, wine for 2, tiramisu split at the end. The card numbers matched hers. Oh, corporate visa, but billed on nights she told me she was wrangling clients. Every excuse she'd fed me lined up against concrete proof. Late meeting. Conference call ran long. Don't wait up, babe. Each lie time-stamped. Now paired with a license plate photo, a signed receipt, or the glow of them sliding into a booth together. My phone buzzed again. Short clip. Grainy, but steady. Satch had found the hotel lobby camera, caught their silhouettes side by side, her heels clicking across the marble floor, his hand brushing her back. They disappeared into the elevator, numbers glowing above the door. 12th floor. Same floor every time, same door, no doubt. I watched all of it in the cab of my truck, windshield wipers cutting through rain. But my hands didn't shake, my chest didn't pound. I wasn't the man-asping in front of the laptop anymore. I'd turned into something colder. It felt like studying blueprints, like running my palm across a crack beam, noting where the fault ran. An engineer doesn't cry over the crack. He maps it, measures it, documents it. Then he decides how to bring the structure down clean. That's what this was now. Not heartbreak, not rage. Documentation. I scrolled back through the shots, Giovanni's neon glowing red over their heads, the Lexus beside the Charger, the blurred figures in the hotel lobby. 1 page at a time, the story was writing itself, not in her words, but in facts she couldn't spin. By Thursday, Satch had doubled the packet. Another round of dinner, another hotel run, same cars in the lot. He labelled it with precision. 7:11 p.m. Arrival. 10:54 p.m. Departure. License plates photographed on exit. 2 nights, identical rhythm. He called me just before midnight. Man, they ain't even cautious. Routine's too smooth. That's arrogance. Which means we can box it easy. Good, I told him, voice flat. Keep building every week, same drill, stack it up. When I hung up, I didn't feel fire. I felt the weight of bricks being laid wall by wall until a case rose in front of me. My case. Our case. I stared out through the rain, watched the blur of headlights slide down the street, and I knew the foundation was solid. The facts were ready. Next step wasn't to cry, beg, or shout. Next step was to carry this into her world, her image, her fortress. The fact pattern was finished. Next came the delivery. Her office tower was all glass and steel, built to mirror reputation back at the city. I wasn't standing there myself, but I knew the scene minute by minute. Noelle had set it up with precision. At 12:05, the elevator doors slid open on Mirelle's floor. The process server stepped out. Plain suit, clipboard in hand, no drama, no shouting, just official. At 12:07, the papers passed from his hand to hers. Witnesses said her face drained of colour right there in the lobby. Her conference badge swung on its lanyard as the whole reception area went quiet. Phones froze mid-scroll. The golden star of the firm had just been served in front of her kingdom. At 12:09, 2 co-workers leaned toward each other, whispering sharp enough to cut air. Nervous laughter rippled, and the word divorce moved through the glass corridors like static on a wire. At 12:11, my phone lit up, her name flashing again and again, 6 calls back to back. I let them ring until the 6th died out. On the 7th, I answered. Her voice cracked through the line. Q, what the hell is this? You had somebody serve me at work? Are you crazy? I kept it flat, just like Noelle drilled into me. Talk to your lawyer. Before she could spit another word, I hung up. That evening she showed up on my porch, heels hitting the boards like gunshots. Her key scraped metal, useless now. The locksmith had been through hours earlier. New bolts, fresh cylinders. I opened the door but never stepped aside. Behind me, warm light filled the house, Zarya moving around the kitchen like it was just another night. You can't lock me out, Morel hissed. This is still my home. No, I told her. I bought this house before we ever said vows. The deed has my name. Always did. She jabbed the key again, rattling it in frustration. The sound of metal failing against metal. And in her eyes, I saw it hit her. The ground had shifted. These walls were no longer hers to claim. I didn't slam the door, didn't raise my voice. I just closed it slow, firm, turned the lock, and left her standing outside. The lines had been drawn, clean and final, boundaries set both in law and in brick. Barton's smelled like spilled whiskey and old varnish, the kind of place where the tables stay tacky no matter how much a barback scrubs. Bass-heavy jazz rolled from the speakers, upright thump, brushes whispering on a snare, horn player dragging blue notes across the room like a pocket knife. I picked a back booth with a view of the door and the bar mirror, sat where the neon beer sign could turn my face into a silhouette. I didn't come alone, not loud company, quiet company. The bartender, Tasha, had the little ceiling camera over the register patched to a DVR she kept for disputes. She nodded when I walked in, slid me a water first, beer second, and said, "If he tries a scene, honey, the scene is already saved." I touched 2 fingers to the brim of my cap in thanks and set my phone on the table recording, screen dark. The threat texts Cade sent earlier were already living twice, on my cloud and in Noel's inbox. He arrived 5 minutes late and 2 sizes too confident. Gym shoulders, slim-fit shirt, cologne that announced itself like a press release. He slid into the booth opposite me, plastered on a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You're going to undo this," he said, no hello. "You're going to stop embarrassing Morel at work. You want to be decent? Be decent." I let the music fill the gap, took a slow pull from the bottle, put it down soft. "You called me here to lecture me on decency?" "I called you here to explain reality," he said, leaning in. "She's moved on. You should too. All this serving papers at the office, changing locks, that's petty man energy." I looked at him the way an engineer looks at a hairline crack, patient, measuring. "Petty is sneaking your co-worker into hotels on repeat and calling it love," he scoffed, sat back, spread his arms like a man who just won something. "Look, man, you had your chance. She needed more. Someone on her level. It is what it is." "That what you tell yourself to sleep?" I asked. "That you won?" He flashed that marketing smile again. "Obviously." I shook my head once. "You didn't win. You inherited a liar." The smile froze, just a heartbeat, like a record catching a scratch. He tried to wave it off, but I pressed, voice low, even. "You think a woman who built a second life in hotel lobbies and text threads suddenly turns honest because the face across the pillow changes? You picked up an asset with hidden rot, might look shiny in the showroom, different when the joist starts squealing." He leaned forward again, jaw tight. "You're projecting, old man." "Am I? Do yourself a favor. Ask a friend about the word temporary." I let it hang. Just like that. Temporary. Ask which group chat she used when she said it. His eyes flicked. Just a flicker. But the seed dropped. Doubt doesn't need sunlight. It grows in the dark. He tried to recover, snapped his fingers for a server who was already busy. "You're bluffing." "Maybe, maybe not." I tapped my phone with one finger. "I don't bluff about threats, though. The ones you sent. Those live in 3 places now. 4. Counting the bar camera, watching you clench your teeth." He glanced toward the bar without meaning to, found the lens, looked away quick. The horn on the record bent a note into a moan. "You think this scares me?" he said, but the volume lowered. "You think I'm going to run because you got documentation?" "I don't want you to run," I said. "I want you to look in the mirror and see the man who volunteered to be Plan B, the interim solution. That's worse than running." He swallowed. For the first time, the fit of his shirt seemed wrong on him, like the seams were pinching. "Here's how it's going to go, Cade," I said, voice still quiet. "I'm not stepping foot in your building. I'm not yelling in parking lots. I'm not performing for your HR. I'll let your own habits sink you. Arrogance breeds routine. Routine breeds evidence. Evidence does the talking. I just carry the mic." He tried to smirk. It landed crooked. "You talk pretty for a guy who pours concrete." "I pour foundations," I said, "and I know when one's already cracked." We sat with the bass line for a few beats. He broke first, pushing back from the booth like the vinyl burned. "Stay away from Mirel," he said, pointing a trembling finger. "Final warning." "Text that," I said. "Spell it out. Saves me transcribing." He stared, then turned sharp and stalked for the door, shoulders tight, swagger leaking with every step. The neon outline in the window swallowed him and spit him onto the wet sidewalk, smaller than when he came in. Tasha slid by my booth with the check I hadn't asked for, set it down like a secret. "All on the how," she murmured. "Camera got sound crisp." "Appreciate you," I said. Outside, rain started needling the glass. I forwarded the fresh clip and the earlier threat thread to Noelle with one line, adding fuel to the restraining order file. Her reply hit before my beer went warm. Received. Nice and admissible. I tucked the phone away and let the jazz carry me to the end of the track. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't swung. I just tilted a mirror and watched him see himself for the first time. By the time he reached the corner, whatever he thought he owned was already corroding from the inside. Their union didn't need me to collapse it. I'd already handed it what it required: doubt, oxygen, and room to rot. My living room turned into a courtroom that night, though no judge sat at the head and no clerk took notes. It was just me, Zarya, and the stack of truth she'd curated like an art exhibit. The coffee table was covered edge to edge. Printouts, receipts, a neat timeline scrawled in her handwriting, still sharp despite the smudges of fatigue. On the TV screen, paused at the first frame, glowed the hotel video. We didn't wait long. At 7 on the dot, the knock came. Morell's parents stepped in. Patricia first, soft-spoken but sharp-eyed, and Royce behind her, suit and tie still on though the hour was late. Status wrapped around him like a scarf. "Show us," Patricia said, voice already trembling. No small talk, no smiles, just business. Zarya hit play. The room filled with the sound of laughter I used to love. Morell's laugh, bright, too bright. At the 5-minute mark, Patricia's hand shot to her mouth, tears sliding over the rims of her glasses. She shook her head, whispering no, again and again, like repetition could rewrite the frame. Royce sat stiff, jaw working, eyes pinned to the screen. When the camera caught Cade leaning in to kiss Morell, Royce exhaled through his nose like a man who just took a gut punch in public. He stood, paced once to the window, then leaned close to me, voice low, stripped of all his practiced thunder. "I underestimated you, Q," he murmured. "Thought you were just swinging hammers, keeping roofs dry. But you built this case like a blueprint, solid, unshakable." I didn't answer. Didn't need to. The papers, the timeline, the receipts, they spoke louder than I ever could. Zarya kept the flow steady. Screenshots of texts, receipts from Giovanni's, photos of license plates lined up with hotel timestamps. She was calm, clinical, the curator of her mother's undoing. By the time the presentation ended, Patricia was weeping openly, Royce's tie was loosened, and the silence sat heavier than any verdict. "We'll speak to her," Patricia said finally, voice brittle but firm. That night they left, carrying the truth with them like a fragile package. But it wasn't me they doubted anymore. It wasn't my character on trial. It was hers. Word travels fast in our kind of town. It doesn't sprint, doesn't shout, it just leaks through pew whispers, barber chairs, PEA meetings, side eyes at grocery aisles. By the end of the week, people weren't asking what Q had done to lose his wife. They were asking what Morell had done to lose everything else. For the first time in months, I felt the weight tilt. Reputation wasn't crushing me anymore. It was cracking her carefully polished mask, and I hadn't even raised my voice. The conference room smelled like lemon polish and old paper. Neutral walls, neutral carpet, neutral air, like the place itself wanted to pretend nothing heavy ever got decided there. But the weight in that room was real. At the head of the long table sat Mrs. Cho, the mediator, glasses perched low on her nose, legal pad already open. To my left, Noelle, sharp as ever, heels planted like anchors. Across from us, Morell, hair pulled tight, no sparkle in her earrings, blouse plain. Next to her, a young lawyer who looked like he'd printed his resume yesterday. His tie was crooked, his confidence thinner than the folder in front of him. Mrs. Cho cleared her throat. "We are here to discuss the petition for a divorce on grounds of adultery. Mr. Holt, you are seeking primary custody and retaining your premarital property. Mrs. Holt, do you contest?" Her lawyer jumped in quick, words rehearsed. "My client acknowledges marital difficulties but rejects the characterization that infidelity defines this marriage." Mr. Holt was emotionally distant, often absent with work. She contributed significantly to the household. Noelle raised one hand, calm as church. "Stop, we're not here to trade feelings. We're here to look at facts." She slid a folder forward, tabbed with precision. "The house, purchased by my client before the marriage. Deed in his name. Finances. We've pulled 3 years of statements. His salary paid mortgage, utilities, property tax. Her income went toward personal expenses. Every card statement confirms it." The young lawyer fumbled through his notes, face paling as he saw the highlighted lines. Morell tried to break in, voice high, desperate. "That doesn't mean I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice. I just turned the pages one by one. Receipts, timestamps, hotel records, photos. I didn't need to make speeches, I just showed." Silence grew thicker with each document laid on the table. "And custody," Noelle said, sliding the last set of papers across. "Zarya has already expressed her preference. At 15, the court considers her voice. She chooses to remain with her father. No disputes." Morell's face crumpled. He poisoned her against me. He made her hate me. Mrs. Cho's voice was cool steel. Mrs. Holt, your daughter witnessed events and gathered evidence independently. That is not alienation. That is consequence. Morel leaned back, blinking fast like she was trying to squeeze sympathy out of the air. None came. 2 hours later, the summary sat on the table in black ink. House remains with me. Custody granted to me with limited visitation for her. Retirement account split in the smallest acceptable measure. No spousal support. No victim story to paper over her choices. Noelle tapped the folder closed. Justice isn't loud, she said. It's just signed. And it was. The gavel hadn't fallen, but the sound in that quiet room felt just as final. The hallway smelled of bleach and fried food reheated one too many times. Extended stay hotels always had that faint promise of impermanence, like the walls themselves knew they were holding lives in transit. Morel's mother had called me the night before, her voice hushed with fear. She's not answering. I'm worried she might do something. Against every instinct in me, I agreed to check. Not to save a marriage, not to mend a bond, just to make sure she was still breathing. I stopped in front of room 237. The door looked tired, scuffed with shoe marks, the lock slightly loose. I knocked once. No answer. Knocked again. My knuckles echoed down the hallway. Morel, it's Q. I'm not here to fight, just checking you're alive. A pause, then the scrape of the chain, the slow pull of the door. She stood there, hair unwashed, sweatshirt hanging limp on her frame. Her eyes were hollow, rimmed in red, like she hadn't slept in a week. The smell hit me first, wine bottles, take-out containers, stale air. She stepped back, wordless, letting me in. The room was a mess, cardboard boxes stacked in corners like half-packed apologies, clothes thrown across the carpet, empty bottles tipped on their sides, little islands in a flood of clutter. The air was damp with hopelessness, the kind you could taste. "This what you wanted me to see?" I asked. She dropped onto the bed, staring at the floor. "I lost my job. Cade left. My parents won't speak to me. Zaria hates me. Everything's gone." I looked around again. Slow. The room wasn't a fall. It was the bottom. Not the stumble, not the slide, the landing. "This isn't rock bottom, Morel," I said. "This is the bottom. The only thing left to do is push off." Her face twisted, caught between bitterness and shame. "Easy for you to say. You still have everything." I shook my head. "No, I lost plenty. I just didn't drown in it." She pressed her palms to her face, shoulders shaking. I didn't reach for her. Didn't cross the room. This wasn't about comfort. Not anymore. "You want a map?" I said finally. "Start small. Shower, sleep, eat food that didn't come from a vending machine. Call your mother back. Then find a job, any job, build from there. Stop waiting for someone to rescue you." She looked up, eyes shining with tears, lips parting like she wanted to ask for more. For me to stay, to hug, to forgive. But that door was gone. I walked back to the threshold, paused with my hand on the handle. "I don't hate you," I said, "but I don't love you either. Those parts of us are finished. What you do from here, that's on you." I left without slamming the door, just pulled it shut behind me, let the latch click, final and light. Walking down that bleach-scented hall, I felt a strange calm. Compassion wasn't the same as reconciliation. I could acknowledge her humanity without reopening the wound. That night, back home, I slept without nightmares for the first time in weeks. Not because she was saved, she wasn't, but because I finally understood the difference between pity and forgiveness. One is a hand reaching down, the other is a hand reaching back, and I wasn't reaching back. Mount Jubilee Baptist had the kind of ceiling where voices soared even when no choir was singing. Stained glass blues and reds spilled across the pews, turning dust motes into little sermons of their own. That's where Zaria agreed to begin the work, not of forgiving, not yet, but of facing her mother across the table of her family counsellor. On her terms, her conditions. I sat in the lobby during the first session, hands folded, listening to the hum of the building. When they came out an hour later, Zaria's face was tight but not broken. She looked at me and said, "It's going to take a lot of sessions." I told her, "That's your call, you decide the pace." Deacon Rollins, old soldier of the church with his cane and his steady eyes, stopped me on the way out. "Son," he said, leaning heavy on the word, "forgiveness ain't no bus ticket. It don't mean she rides back into your house. It just means you stop carrying her baggage yourself." His voice had the weight of gravel and scripture. Forgiveness is not a pass back into your bedroom. That line stuck with me like nails in timber. Back home, my life was stripped down to quiet routines. Work sites during the day, steel beams and blueprints. Evening runs down cracked sidewalks, the rhythm of sneakers on asphalt my moving meditation. Saturdays spent at the barber shop or laughing with Martinez from the crew. Sundays sometimes, just me and a cup of black coffee on the porch, the street humming its low lullaby. Every now and then someone new from the gym would ask if I wanted to grab a coffee. I went. No expectations. Just steam rising off cups, laughter that didn't need translation, the reminder that connection could exist without performance. No fireworks, no rush, just slow, honest presence. Morel's texts came like whispers in the night. "I'm sorry." "Another week. I love you." Then silence again. My phone would buzz, the words would glow, and I'd sit there on the porch with the crickets tuning up behind me. But I wasn't obligated to answer. Her apologies didn't owe me a reply, and her declarations didn't demand a door. Zaria knew too. She saw the messages sometimes, glanced at me sideways, waiting. I told her straight, "You don't have to respond to everything in life. Some words are just air. Not every sorry deserves an echo." She nodded, shoulders lighter. Over time, the storm of divorce settled into something steadier. Parallel parenting. Not reconciliation, not war, just the shared business of raising a daughter without tearing her in two. We kept it transactional. School schedules, medical appointments, tuition bills, nothing more, nothing less. And in that arrangement, I found a strange kind of peace, not triumphant, not bitter, just steady, like water after a flood, calm, reflective, moving forward. We weren't a family anymore, not in the old sense. But we weren't enemies either. We were two separate roads, parallel lines that only met where Zaria stood. And that was enough. Zaria's graduation smelled of roses and summer sweat, the gymnasium packed with families waving phones in the air like lanterns. When her name rang out, I stood tall, clapping, till my palms stung. Across the auditorium, Morel rose too. Two parents, one daughter, two separate lives colliding only in that moment of pride. Zaria walked the stage, tassel swinging, smile wide, eyes bright, and for a heartbeat, the years of shadows and courtrooms and late-night whispers collapsed into one truth: she had made it through. After the ceremony, the hugs, the photos, the endless folding chairs scraped back across the floor, we came home. Just me and her back on our porch, evening air carrying the smell of cut grass and fried food from down the block. She leaned against the railing, cap still on, hair slipping out the sides. "I don't feel angry anymore," she said. "Not the way I used to. I feel stronger. Not bitter, just stronger." I nodded. "That's the real inheritance, Z. Not the house, not the money. Strength without poison." She smiled, soft but sure. "Then we did okay?" Inside, my office lamp still burned, the old flash drive sitting on the corner of the desk. The one that had split our family open with 19 minutes of digital proof. I picked it up, felt its weight, lighter than a key, heavier than a stone. For 3 years it had been a reminder, a wound sealed in plastic. I opened the trash can, dropped it in. No ceremony, no speech, just a click of plastic hitting plastic. Some endings don't need a soundtrack. Back on the porch, the sky had gone indigo, stars starting to poke through, cicadas tuning up in the trees. Zaria leaned her head on my shoulder. I exhaled, deep and even, the way you breathe when the fight is done and nothing's chasing you anymore. I didn't celebrate her downfall. That wasn't the win. The victory was this: quiet, steady, free. Peace settling in where rage used to live. Sometimes victory doesn't come with trumpets or headlines. Sometimes victory is just not losing yourself when someone else tried their best to take you apart. That night, I sat with my daughter on our porch, in the house I'd built, in the life we'd salvaged, and I knew the story was closed and we were open to the future.